Hey everyone, we're about to start the NativeScript 2.3 webinar. If you're watching this, it's several weeks from now. And before we start, we have something we didn't include in the webinar that's very important that we want to tell you. TJ?
Yeah, so this video that you're about to see is pre-recorded. We're here in Boston at NativeScript Developer Day. However, we will be answering questions live during this event using the Ask NativeScript hashtag on Twitter. So if you have any questions, you get confused at all, you want clarification, more information, use hashtag Ask NativeScript. We have some people standing by to ask any questions you have, and enjoy the webinar.
Well, hello, and welcome to the NativeScript 2.3 launch webinar, live from the NativeScript Developer Day 2016. Super exciting. Here we are. Here we go. If you're watching this, it's probably a couple of weeks later. We're recording this live at the event for the official launch of NativeScript 2.3, which is huge. We're very excited about it. Today, your presenter here, your panel here, we have myself. I work on the developer relations team at Progress. I'm joined by Mr. TJ VanToll, also on the developer relations team, and super special guest, Raymond Camden, developer advocate at IBM. So excited to have Raymond join us. Thanks for being here today, man. We appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Rock and roll. So we're going to go through and show everyone some of the exciting things that are in 2.3 today, and we're going to do that by actually building up an app from scratch. Raymond here is going to join us and offer some insight as we do that. So let's get started because we've got a lot to go through. So the first thing I want to do is fire up Visual Studio Code, which I have already done, and I have created a new NativeScript application. And when we create one of those, if you've used NativeScript before, you get a default app that looks like this. So this is the default NativeScript app. Not a whole lot to look at, just meant to show you the bare bones functionality. Of course, if you tap this enough times, you'll get all the way down to 0 taps, and hooray, you're ready to start building. So that in and of itself, not enough to prepare you for NativeScript. Today, what we want to do is look at some of the new things that are in 2.3, and we're going to do that through the lens of Angular. So I don't know if you knew this, but Angular 2 is final now.
I heard a few people on the internet talking about
There was
it.
2 or 3, wasn't that big of a deal. If you missed it, right. So
there were balloons.
Yeah, there were balloons. In fact, I think David East dropped the balloons, or at least he claims to have dropped the balloons. I don't know if he actually did. It's exciting because we've waited a long time. We have had integration for Angular and NativeScript since the RC at May, and then they broke it several times along the way. So we're very excited about stability. I know everyone is. So let's take a look at that. The application that we're going to be building today. Has a map on the bottom, has a list view on top. We're going to pull in some remote data, and then we're going to view the images basically that are around us or near us, and we're going to view those in a separate window. If we look at the component that we get here out of the box, we get this app component. And what we want to do is sort of take all of this out of here and begin to wire up our new application. Our app's going to have 2 views in it, so what we want to do is go ahead and add those in. So I'm going to add a new folder here, and we're going to call it components.
Also, I love Visual Studio Code that you can just create folders and files, and also like drag and drop files in the sidebar. I know that's something that was never worked quite like I wanted to in Sublime.
Yes.
Never built in, so super cool.
So my first question, using the Ionic CLI, one of the things that they have done is added some code at the CLI to generate folders and files for you, like making a new view, making a new component. For NativeScript, is there something that's going to help you do the boilerplate new view and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we have what's known as our NativeScript code samples now that shipped in the latest release. So if you go to the NativeScript docs, you'll see code samples in the sidebar. And these are intended to be similar, like copy and pastable examples. And we don't yet have that integrated into the CLI. So right now it is a manual step. Okay. You go to the docs, you find it, you copy and paste it in. We are talking about the potential to just build them in.
Yes.
There are also things, we have NativeScript snippets for Visual Studio Code as well, which is not quite the same, right? It's not generating files, but it's also like shorthands for like, I need a stack ladder, a switch, that sort of thing as well.
Okay.
Yeah, and we should point out that we're also going to add integration with the Angular CLI coming up very soon. Nice. And the Angular CLI provides scaffolding. Okay. So we will as well provide scaffolding directly from the Angular CLI.
Perfect.
Very exciting stuff coming. Great question, though.
Thank you.
So while we were chatting there, I've added 2 folders, one for our images list view, which will be the first view, and one for the image component, which will be the second view. I put those in a folder called components because that's what Angular 2 says to do. And then each one inside its own component folder where we'll put the component file, the TypeScript file, and the markup as well.
Okay.
So we call it markup. It's XML. But we'll call it markup because it sounds less intimidating.
Well, Angular
XML
templates, they're not technically XML just because Angular templates use like the square brackets around attributes and circles around attributes, which XML parsers reject. And they're not really HTML either in NativeScript, so we call them HTML just because you can see Visual Studio Code likes the highlighting there. The file extension, and because that's what Angular calls them as well, so it's just consistency.
Okay, correct. So I'm adding a little bit of text here. So we're going to have an image list view, so we're going to add a label there, and then over on the image component, we're going to add in some, said I wanted to do that. Let me pull up my snippets here. We're going to add in some image HTML. Go ahead and paste that in. So just a little bit of markup so we can distinguish the 2 views. And then we need to go ahead and add in the code for those 2 components, the boilerplate base amount of code that we need to make this work. These are empty right now, so let me go ahead and add in the image list component boilerplate, so we'll paste that in. You can see here, this is just a bare bones Angular 2 component. We import a component, we use a component annotation here, we specify the location of the template, which we can see is components, images list component, images list, that's one too many lists there. There we go. And then HTML, and then we just export an empty class here.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at that code too, it's no different than what you would write for a web app. It's identical in that case.
Good point. So let's go ahead and add in the image component boilerplate as well. So we'll go ahead and paste that in. Now, the next thing that we need to do is we need to actually alter the main app component here because that's what's going to be loaded first. And that's sort of the entry point of the application. So we need to alter that so that we have a router that can route between these 2 different pages. So I'm going to come here and I'm basically going to remove all of this stuff from the app component and I'm going to replace it with, let's see here, app component with some routing capabilities here, and then we'll talk about what all this does.
Okay.
Yep, and you can see the page router outlet, that's our Angular directive that's essentially a wrapper of Angular's router outlet. So if you were in a web app, you would type router outlet, not page router outlet. And the reason we do that is because we have to wrap that router to add native specific things like make the hardware back button work on Android and the little swipe gesture on iOS and transitions and all these other things that we add to it. So, but it works the same way API-wise.
Correct. And this right here, we're actually done here. So once we put all this in, we're going to control the routes from a separate file. We're going to put those in a routing file here in just a second. So this is all we have to do is basically just tell the app, hey, you're going to use a router as sort of a top-level construct, and then we're going to load pages into that router. And that's what's happening here. So let's go ahead and add in a routing file here. So I'm just going to do new file. We're going to call it app.routing.ts.
So I assume, like, for a very simple app, I may include that logic in the core app file. But for a, like, quote-unquote, better app, you would separate that.
Yeah, these naming conventions come from Angular's own thing. Essentially, we look at what they do in their quick start guide, and then we do it too. So they name theirs app.routing.ts, so we're like, well, that sounds good to us.
Right.
Both because we're trying to be consistent, right, with what people already know, and also, like, it's just, it's hard. Naming is hard, so if someone else makes the decisions for us, excellent.
I agree.
So what we've got here in this routing file is we're basically specifying this const routes, which is an array, and then inside of that we've got a path, which, this is basically your root. And you can specify this as empty string or slash, and then the component that we want to load. So we're saying for your root route, we would just want to load the images list component by default. And then when we go to the image route, so when we pass in /image as the route, we want to load the image component. And then we export that as this navigable components, which we're going to use here and actually inject that into the main file. So let's alter our main file here. This is the file which bootstraps the application. So I'm going to pull all of this out.
Yeah, and to your question earlier, you'll see when Burke pulls this in. In this case, this ng module that's on line 9, if you look at the Angular quick starts, they'll actually put that in a separate file too. They'll have an app.module.ts. In this case, for simplicity, it's right in here. You could do the same sort of thing with routing. You can see it's importing the routes, which is used on line 16 there, and there's the navigatable components. Pulling from a different file, but you could inline it in here if you wanted to, for simplicity.
Now there's a little, this is a little bit of boilerplate, but this is really standard Angular 2 stuff. Once you've got this set up and you're ready to go, and again, I think this goes back to your scaffolding question. Right. Ideally, you would want to scaffold this from the CLI, and we're definitely looking at doing that with the Angular CLI.
Cool.
So once we have all this set up, in theory, if we've done everything correctly, we should be able to jump back over to our application, which may have crashed in the meantime, and it did, and that's okay. As we're making code changes, the CLI can only keep up for so long before it's like, you've made too many changes. I'm going to need you to sort of re-specify what you want me to do here. So let me go ahead and let's
You've been running a lot of things, Bert.
What
do you got going on here? Your screen is like Matrix-like, which I kind of like. You got the...
You're a hardcore hacker. Right?
It's a little bit much.
Like if you typed really hard and really fast, like you could look really impressive at like a coffee shop.
Have you guys seen that hacker typer website where you can just pull it up and then...
No.
You haven't seen that? Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah, Google it.
Right. My kids use it all the time. They're like, look, I can code. I'm like, that's about how I feel. All right, so what I've done is basically kicked off a live sync. The reason why there's so much text here is because that's from the original build here. And see, it looks like I've actually made a mistake here in that I don't have the correct path. So you can see that right here. So let's go ahead and resolve that.
At least we get a good error.
I know, it's very nice here. So let me come back over here. And in our images list component,
I think when you did that rename, that's very suspect.
Yeah, it sounds.
Yeah, that's so okay.
Components, images list component.
I see image lit. Was that?
I forgot an S. Look at that.
Well, actually, that doesn't look like a list, actually.
And that's where scaffolding will actually kind of help with that.
Yeah, you get away from these manual mistakes. Like, we got to bump this up on the roadmap now.
So was that the only error that I had there?
I think so. I don't know. And live sync should be smart enough.
And so let's go ahead and kick that live sync off again, since
it should be actually just still running.
Let's see here. I may close these other tabs as well.
You gotta love live coding.
That's awesome. So the other thing is that I want to do real quick is show people that you can actually hide the JavaScript files inside of Visual Studio Code, which is super useful because as of yet, there's no cold folding inside of Visual Studio Code, where ideally you would have a TypeScript file and a JavaScript file, and you'd be able to collapse one underneath the other. So what you can do in the meantime is you can do, you can go to Code, Preferences, Workspace Settings. Yep. Is that right?
Yeah, user settings would be things to apply to basically everything you do in code. Workplace settings is specific to this workplace or this project, this app in this case.
Right, so we can do files.exclude, and it's going to give us some defaults, and then we can add in, so let's just add in star.js. That is all of the JavaScript files, and then NativeScript produces source maps for debugging, so we can go ahead and .js.map. Is that right? TJ?
Yep, .js.map.
Okay, we can go ahead and exclude those as well here, so let's do that.
And it should, Visual Studio, or Code is pretty smart about this. It should just auto-magically hide them as soon as you save that file, which is a nice little feature too.
Yep. All right, so let's jump back over and see if we do. So
nice.
We now have two views, but we actually have no way to get between them because we haven't wired up an event. So what we want to do here is just add a click on this label. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Let's pull up the
Tapberg. This is a mobile app.
You don't click in mobile apps.
You don't click in mobile apps.
I click on everything. So let's add in a tap event here. So we'll just say tap, and we'll just say that we want to do a navigate event. And this is just standard Angular 2 binding here. So let's go add this event in the images list component. Pull that up, and here we just want to add that event somewhere in this class. So let me go back to my snippets here. So we have an image list with routing, and actually, let's go ahead and just replace everything that's in this particular file, and we'll talk about why we did that. So images list component with routing, paste that in here. And we've added some things here. TJ, you want to talk about what I've added here?
Yeah, so this is our router extension. And much like we talked about with page router outlet earlier, this is just a wrapper of Angular's own router. And for much the same reason that we do it is we need to add some things to the router, like the ability, that line 12 you see there, the navigate, you could pass an option, the second parameter as an object and say like transition flip, for instance, if you wanted to do like a flip transition, and clear the history stack, like mess with the history in Android and iOS. There's some options for that as well. So there's various things that you can do with our extension of the Angular router.
It's like for a login event, you don't want to go back ever. You want to have a new route when you log in.
Yep, exactly.
Correct, exactly. That's exactly what we're doing. And you can see here this /image, That's the route we're talking about. So in NativeScript, that's how you route, which is very similar to the web, right? You would route to some partial URL, and it would just sort of work. And the idea is the same in NativeScript. I like how you guys are like talking over. I feel like I'm so short. You just like talk right over my head.
So.
All right, so let's go back to our app here, and I should now be able to click on this images list view, and it loads in the new view. And we automatically get the back button because we're using the iOS navigation strategy, and we got something that was pushed onto a navigation controller, which means that we can actually grab the edge of the screen and go back this way as well. And all of that just works out of the box. Yeah, it's really nice. All right, so let's do something a little bit more impressive than a list view here, or rather a label here. I want to grab the user's current location. We're going to actually need that before we can do anything else. So let's do that. What we're going to have to do in order to do that is to add in the NativeScript geolocation plugin. So we do that by saying tns plugin add NativeScript geolocation. Now I've already added this plugin, and I did that because the Wi-Fi here is so slow that I wanted to make sure we weren't waiting on this. You can see here it's smart enough to tell us it's already installed.
Can you search for plugins via the CLI?
That's a good feature request. You can actually not do that. The best way to search right now is you can either go to npm and search for NativeScript. You could also go, we have a community site called nativescript.rocks, which has a really nice plugin listing as well. That's the best place to look at the moment.
So let me close this. What we want to do is add a new folder here because we're going to create a geolocation service. So I'm going to create a folder called services. And again, this is just in keeping with Angular 2 and their patterns here. We're just going to call it geolocation.service. Okay. And then inside here, let's drop some code. All right, so this looks a little bit verbose, but basically what I'm doing is I'm taking this geolocation API that we have, and plugin, and I'm sort of normalizing that so that it's easy to use in multiple views. One of the things I'm doing is creating an interface for latitude and longitude because that's what we want to store. This is a TypeScript feature, and then I can sort of pass that around in my application. So what getLocation does is the first thing it does is it asks to see if we actually have permission to use the location. And if we don't, it will prompt the user and say, hey, is it cool if we track the location? Everybody's seen that screen. So if we don't have that, it will ask, and if we once granted, it will then get the user's current location, and that's here.
So what's the story for that on Android then? Because wouldn't it say when they installed that's using it?
No, as of Android 5?
Yeah, Android 6 has changed it, so yeah, essentially to make this work, you would have to add it to your Android manifest for older Android versions, and then I believe there's, I can't remember off the top of my head whether the plugin handles this, but Android 6 Plus will use this basically the same iOS model, where it'll prompt you when you need it.
Yep. Okay.
And I can't remember off the top of my head whether the plugin handles that out of the box or whether there's some additional check you need to do. And we should note, too, that even though we're showing iOS here for the simulator, we're just doing that out of simplicity for the sake of demo. But all of this code, it's totally cross-platform.
And speed.
Yeah, runs on Android. Runs on Android as well.
So the other thing that we're doing here, which is kind of interesting, is I've got this getDistanceFrom method because we're going to pull back distances that are, say, 2.4 miles away. But when we get those distances back from the geolocation service, it's going to tell us that information in terms of meters. So we're going to need to normalize that down to some sort of unit that's a little bit more human readable. So there's a really cool NPM package called Humanized Distance, and we can use NPM package directly in NativeScript as long as they don't have a browser dependency. So in order to use this, we would do npm install humanized distance. Now I've already added this again because I don't want to have to depend on the Wi-Fi, but once we've done that, we can now use it. So I've got this service set up. I basically wrapped all this stuff so that it's not in my main file. It's in a services file, so my main file can stay clean. So let's go back and add that in here. And again, I'm going to pull all this out just for the sake of simplicity. Let's go back and add in our images list component with geolocation. And what we've added here is a geolocation service, and then we're adding it as a provider. Do you want to talk about why we're adding it as a provider, TJ?
Yeah, so Angular recommends making your services injectable, meaning that it's basically their dependency injection implementation. So if you look at line 11, where the geolocation is actually included in the constructor, notice that you're not instantiating that service anywhere. Angular, by telling it this geolocation service is a provider, Angular knows that when you're included in the constructor to inject an instance of it. Now, this is useful for especially bigger apps when you need to test things in isolation, because if you also need to inject, you can inject them into your test, for instance, and sort of make your apps, or your files, I should say, less coupled.
I want to ask a question about the top where you did the imports, and this may be just Angular 2 way of doing things, but it really kind of bugs me that you have to worry about the dot dot slash dot dot slash dot dot slash. Is there any concept of just freaking root? So I could do like root services.
Well, there is a concept of the parent folder, which is /, but there is no like tilde.
Yeah.
Just take me to the root and then let me go down from there.
So if you move this file like down one, then that would break, and that's what kind of bugs me. And
Yes.
that's not NativeScript. That's Angular 2 probably.
Well, that's I believe that is a module. That's just an ES6 module limitation.
Yeah, but what's cool, what I like though is because this is TypeScript, at least you'll know about it
Yeah, true.
immediately, which is
Right.
kind of a nice little feature. The other thing I want to note real quick on that code, if you go back to that for a moment, Burke,
Sure.
I'll give you a second here, is with Angular 2 final, like see line 7 where this is included as a provider, line 7's on the top. Geolocation services being included as a provider. As of Angular 2 final, actually as of RC5, you can also put that in an ng module. So you could declare this in that main.ts file where we had the ng module there, basically to provide that service for multiple places. You don't have to tie it to an individual component.
That's pretty cool.
We should talk about ng and init real quick. This is, again, another Angular 2 thing. If you want to do something as the view is loading or on load, this is where you would do that. So you pull in on init here, you implement it on your class, and then your ng on init. And actually, if we didn't even have this method, because of TypeScript, I'll take this out and I'll show you what it'll do. So TypeScript will immediately get angry and say, you're not implementing because property ng on init is missing. So it's basically telling you have to add that method if you want to implement.
So coming from someone who's on Cordova, is that like the ready event, or is it different than the ready event?
It's at the component level. So it's not saying your app is ready, it's saying this individual component is ready. So it'll fire, the router will essentially just sort of delegate control to this first component, and then when that component loads, you'll say initialize. So you could also have ng on init on like your subsequent components, like if you had, you're routing to several ones, or even if you had nested components. In terms of a ready event for the whole application, that's something you would probably put in that app component file, the thing that starts up the routing, the thing that had the page router outlet. You could add like a constructor or an init on that, and that's just saying like you're ready to go. You could do something like at the app level set up there.
So just make this simpler. So for Ionic, if I do anything hardware based, I have to wait for the ready event, because I'm not sure when Angular will load versus when the Cordova ready event is fired. For NativeScript, is that a concern at all, or can I just say, bam, use the hardware, which that's doing right there?
You need to do it after, if you go to main.ts real quick.
Pull up the main file. Once you've called the bootstrap,
yeah, that's
you're
what I was
good to
going to
go.
show. So
Yes.
you need to do it after line 21. So that'll delegate control to app component module. Once you're in app component, you're good. From the
So
hardware
is
level.
that out of the box? Like, would every sample NativeScript app do that, or do I have to do something different to do that?
Now, you should be able to do that in any app. Good Bootstrap, that's really, this is a Bootstrap module is an Angular API. So at that point, and we were using our wrapper of it, and so our wrapper makes sure that you're good to go, so that by the time you get to that first component in your app, you're good to do hardware things. I mean, Burke's essentially doing it right here. This is the first component in this application, ng on init, and he's going to the hardware right there.
Yeah.
So are you saying don't worry about it?
Correct. Don't worry about it.
Just don't put it at the top of your main.ts file. Like, don't put it as the first line there, and you're good.
Okay.
Yeah, because this is a native app, by the time you get to your application code here where you're building views, you're good to go. You don't have to worry about it.
Very cool.
So right here, we're basically calling that service and saying get location, which is going to ask for permission to use the location. Then it's going to get our latitude and longitude, and it's going to show those here. Now, something that I should point out here is that in the simulator, this is actually a limitation of the iOS simulator. We actually have to come to debug, and we have to change our location.
Yeah.
So we could change it to Apple, or is this true for Cordova as well?
Yeah.
Okay, good, because I spent like 4 hours trying to figure out why it wouldn't pick up my location.
It's a very Apple thing to put Apple in the list of predefined locations.
I know.
because
Right, Apple.
It's typical Apple.
City bicycle ride. Like trip to McDonald's should be in here. I think that's what, or In and Out.
Real
Burger.
developer.
Right, exactly. More Fritos. All right, so custom location, we'll take that, and we'll say okay. And this is actually Franklin, Tennessee, which is where I live, and we'll say allow. And then over here, we should get the latitude and longitude, which we did. You can see it's right there in our and our output, so latitude and longitude reported by the device. So we're cool. We've got latitude and longitude. We're now ready to do something with that. So let's do that. Let's jump over here, and let me check my snippets to see where I am in the stack here. So the next thing we want to do is add in a map. To do that, you have a couple different options. You can use Google Maps. You can use iOS Maps as well. There's a plugin for that. That's only going to work on iOS. Google Maps is a little bit difficult on Android because you have to have Google Play services.
It's harder on Android?
That is correct.
Harder to get started on Android because there's the Google Play Services dependency, because getting that to work in the emulator is, especially in Genymotion. If you're a Genymotion user, adding Google Play Services is like this ridiculously contrived step to do. Now, in terms of how it works excellent on Android. It's just the development experience is a bit of a pain.
Now, fortunately, there's a plugin, there's a library out there called Mapbox, which is fantastic. I believe Uber uses Mapbox. I have to double check on that.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Sid, you'll have to cut that from the webinar if that's wrong. Or just leave it in. They do now. We just said they do.
Yeah, there you go. We said it. So it's
Mapbox works cross-platform, and you don't have to do any extra configuration on either platform to make it work. It is a thing of beauty. Eddie Verbruggen, who is the Cordova plugin master, wrote a plugin for NativeScript that wraps Mapbox. So we can TNS plugin add NativeScript Mapbox. And again, I've already done this, so if we try to do it, it's going to tell me, hey, you've already added the plugin, so you can just go ahead and use it. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to add Mapbox to our application. So let's go ahead and pull in Mapbox here. And I don't remember exactly how I've done my snippets, so let's check back. So we're going to require Mapbox. So I'm going to go ahead and paste this in. So you can see here, we're requiring Mapbox, and we do that by just Mapbox require NativeScript Mapbox. And then this access token here, this is the token that we need to actually use the service. And Mapbox is a free tier that you can use sort of for development here as you move through. It's excellent. It's fully functional, so that's what we're going to use. And then the next thing we need to do is we need to actually load the map into our view. And we're going to do that via code here. So I'm going to come down here and add in a load map view. So we'll paste this in. Let's talk through this here for a second. In this load map method, we're going to call mapbox.show, pass in our access token, the type of map that we want. We're going to hide the logo. We're going to show our current location, which is that blue dot with the expanding, which is also something that I don't believe Google Maps does, which is really odd. And then we're going to add a top margin so that it shows at the bottom of the screen. And then here, we're going to do get the position, latitude, and longitude from our service. So we've already got the latitude and longitude. We're just going to reuse it here to center the map over our current position and then set the zoom level. So what we need to do here then is instead of console.log, which is not super helpful, we're just going to call this .load map. So when we call this, this will load the map, or should load the map, and show our position according to the emulator on the device. Let's go over here and look at this.
Also love the TypeScript arrow functions, or actually the ES 2015 arrow functions, so that this .load map just works on line 19, so you don't have to do like the var that equals this
so nice
mess. Yeah.
All right, so we've got the map here down at the bottom, and you can see that's our current position. If we were in Franklin, Tennessee, which we're not, we'd have to get our... I think it's so weird that the simulator doesn't have a button that's like, where just set it to my current position. Like, it doesn't know. It seems like a missing feature. All right, so now that we've done that, the next thing that we want to do is actually pull in some images that are close by. So I'm going to go back here, and we want to add in some HTML or markup to display those images here above the map where this label is.
I have a question about the map. You set the margin to put it at the bottom of the page. Why isn't your view layer saying, like, here's an empty map, and then the TS code loads the map into that box or whatever?
Okay, so for the Mapbox plugin, the way that it's currently implemented, it has to be done through code. Now, Eddie and I had talked about making it so that you can do that via markup, which is the way that it actually should be done, and that's the way the NativeScript Google Maps plugin works. So we just need to alter that plugin, but that was a great question. Because what you'll notice is the map as it currently exists is static. If you put it inside of a NativeScript layout container via markup, then it will expand or contract to the size of the layout container that it's in, which is ideally what we would want. All right, so after that fantastic question, let's go back and add a little bit of markup here to our images list HTML. Let's get rid of this label, which is not super helpful, and add in our markup here. So list view HTML, paste that into code. And this looks a little bit verbose, but it's not too bad. We have an action bar at the top, basically setting the title. We've got a grid layout here, and the grid layout basically says use the whole screen. And that's one of the ways that we use a grid layout. That's the star.star basically says rows take up the full space, columns take up the full space, one row, one column. And then a list view here. And the list view implements a repeating list of items. And it also uses the virtualization technology that native list views have. So we're about to shove 40,000 rows into this list view. And the only way that we can do that, even on a native platform, and have that be responsive in any way, shape, or form, is to use this list view component, which iOS and Android give you out of the box if you want to show tons of items and just be able to scroll through them.
And that's baked in automatically, whether it's 5 items or 50,000.
Correct. Now you don't have to use a list view. You could use a repeater, but if you did that, your performance would suffer because the list view is actually virtualizing. It's basically, as you scroll, it's reusing the same set of cells over and over and over again and just swapping out the contents for you. That's how they make that so fast.
And what's cool is that it's not NativeScript magic that's happening here. We're just delegating to the UI table view and letting iOS do the work. So all we're doing is just taking the data that you put in your Angular template, telling UI table view about it, and letting the native control do its thing.
Now you'll notice here that we're bound this items to a photos property that does not exist yet. So we need to actually go out, get some photos, bring them in. And to do that, we're going to create another service that connects to Flickr. So I'm going to do a new file here. We're going to call this Flickr service. Flickr.service.service.ts.
Well, you're nailing it, Burke.
Because Sid told me to type quietly, and now I can't think. All right.
I'm just gonna keep giving you crap. I'm sure it won't improve your typing.
I know. Just humiliate me. That should fix everything.
Yep.
All right. So what we've got here is a service, and we've got some stuff up here for RxJS, which we'll talk about here in a second. And then a client ID and an app URL. This is for Flickr. And then again, an interface so that we know what sort of response when it comes back. We can work with it in other files and know what properties are available. Then our Flickr service has a photo search method. And it's going to call this URL, and then it's going to return it's going to take the response, that JSON method basically proxies it to an object, and we're going to get the photos. The photo object is what we want. That's the array of photos from the response.
And I'll point out one thing too. I said this earlier, but if you look at this file, there's nothing NativeScript specific here. So if you wanted to write a Flickr service that you could use in your web app and also your NativeScript app, well, here you go. You wrote it once.
And I think for a lot of people, this, and for me as well, this whole observables and RxJS is really sort of part of the curve and can be difficult to learn. I will say that once you wrap your head around what RxJS does, it makes a lot of sense, and it becomes very easy to just continue to do that.
I can attest. So with Ionic 2, that one part right there has been the hardest part to get my head around.
Yeah, you're not alone. TJ as well messaged me one day and was like, I'm in observable hell and I don't know what to do.
I just got promises. Promises.
Right. And you can actually you can do to promise on observables. So you do have that option. And I think the Angular 2 docs show that. But once you get observables, you become comfortable with it and it's fine. But you can basically see here, we're going to return an observable, and it's going to be full of an array of these Flickr responses. And this map right here basically just is like a for each. So we're pulling this response back. We can do something with all of the items, but I'm just going to return the whole set back out of the function. So in order to use this, we need to actually subscribe to this service. So let's do that in our images list component here.
This is also the very hardest thing to debug in your app is when you forget to subscribe, because the code runs without any errors, but it doesn't run.
All right, so we have a load photos method, and we need an import, so I brought that in as well. And then Visual Studio Code did not respect my formatting.
I wonder if there's a keyboard shortcut, because I run into this all the time.
Yeah, I need a feature request here. Okay, so there's a couple different things. TypeScript is warning us because we haven't imported this Flickr search service, and we don't have a photos property, so we're going to fix that now. I pulled this in as part of my snippet there, so Flickr service. Then if you remember, we got to add it as a provider because it's injectable, because otherwise we would have to do var Flickr service equals new Flickr service.
Love the TypeScript autocomplete.
Yeah, thank you, TypeScript. And then we're going to put it in down here as well, so we're going to say private. That is not a word.
You're killing it, Burke.
Private Flickr service.
Oh, there you go. TypeScript saving you.
Yeah, come on, TypeScript, help me out. Even TypeScript can't help me. All right, so we've got it. We've pulled it in, and we should be good to go. The last thing we need to do is add in that photos element or property that we're binding to. And if you remember, that is, and I believe I also need to pull in this interface, my Flickr response. And that's basically, so we just come down and say our photos is an array of iFlickr response like that. Okay, if we've done all that correctly, we drop down here and make sure we don't have any squigglies. We don't. We're good to go. So we just need to call load photos. So what we're actually going to do here is we're going to load the photos and the map at the same time. So we'll call load map, and then we'll call this dot load photos. There we go. Are we ready to check this out? Is this going to work?
Yeah. It should.
Go ahead and save this.
I'm ready to see some pictures of Franklin, Tennessee.
Bro, you're going to be blown away. I promise
I'm
you
sure,
will. You will not be disappointed.
I'm sure it's an amazing place.
So here we go. So you can see we're syncing in the background. We're going to give our service here a second. So you can see it's bringing back all of our items here, and we're basically saying, and you can see here that humanized distance is giving us in yards, right? And then as we get farther away, it'll go to miles. So there are 40,000 items in this list view. It is insanely long, and you can see that the performance is really, really good. And
that's badass. That's what that is.
Yeah, it's friggin' phenomenal. All right, so what we want to do now is I want to drop markers on the map for every single one of these images. So we already have the images. We don't really need to go and get them again. We just need to drop some markers. So I'm going to add a drop markers method here, and this will allow us to drop markers on the map box. So let's drop markers. And you can see here we're basically saying we're creating this list of markers and we're adding them to the map box. That's all we're doing. And then up here we're just going to say, oops.
Nice do something comment there, Burke.
Yeah, it's a reminder.
It's a good reminder.
I should do something. I'm not sure what, just do it. All right, so let's save this, go over. And I've got a live sync running in the background, which is why I don't have to constantly restart this thing. We'll let it go back, and we should now pull in the images from the Flickr service, show them in the list view, and if we've done everything correctly, we're now getting markers. Right?
And this works because the Flickr API returns like geo data. Is that correct?
Correct. It returns, so you can basically send it latitude and longitude, and then it will send you as many photos as it possibly can. And it basically tells you in the API, it's like, we're going to send you like 50,000 photos. So if you don't want that many, then you should provide us some upper limit in the response, which I did not. I just asked for all of them. So the next thing I want to do is I want to be able to click on one of these things and center the map over that specific marker, because right now there's a disconnect. So let's add a center map function here. Let's go back and oops, all snippets. Let's go center our map here. There we go. So paste this in. So we have a center map component, center map function rather. I'm going to save this, and if you remember, probably don't because I don't, over here in our list view, we actually said whenever we tap an item, we want you to center the map. So I'm just basically adding in this function that did not exist before. Okay. Just go over here, let it load up again. So now I should be able to click on one of these things. So let's click on one, and it recenters the map. And you can see that it's animated as well, and Mapbox does that automatically.
Is that a free plugin?
The plugin itself is free. Mapbox has a free tier and a paid tier, and I'm not sure exactly what the restrictions on that are. Well, what's going on there in Franklin, Tennessee?
This was the Williamson County Fair, which is why there's so much markers all on top of each other there.
It's hopping.
All right, so what we want to do now is we want to be able to click on one of these markers and actually see the full image here. So let's add that. I'm going to go over and switch out the markup for the image component here. We'll pull all this out here.
And this is where like the master detail pulls in, right? You're going to go from the list to an individual image. And
that is correct.
Okay.
I'm getting a little bit long, so image component, paste that into code. Oops. And so I got ahead. That's not HTML. Let's put that in the image component.ts. So we'll go ahead and remove all this, put this in. We'll come back here in a second. I want to get this HTML taken care of. So let's pull this out. Let's go back.
What software are you using for those snippets, by the way?
This is called CodeBox.
CodeBox.
Yeah, good stuff here. All right, so we're going to paste this in. Now, this is really simple markup. Just an image and the action bar as well. Basically, when I put the action bar in there, what that does is it automatically shows the action bar on that screen without it dropping down after the fact. I believe that's...
Yeah, and you could also give it a title there, like if you wanted to see the maybe the details of the photo. We can hard code something for now. Or
All right, so now that we've got this image component, let me come over here and show you that what we've done here is a couple different things. So I'm going to kind of work down from the top here. We have an image component. I have a URL. That's what the image in our view is bound to. We need to update that property. I've also been using this activated route. So this is also, again, this is Angular 2. When you want to do something when the route changes, this is how you do it. So activated route, we're subscribing. We're basically going to get the ID off the route, set it, and then we're going to get photo, which is a method on the service that we have not added yet. And then I'm going to compose a URL that points directly to that photo based on the information that Flickr gives me back from their API. So let's add in, let's go back to our Flickr service and add in this method that we need here. Let's go back. And I wonder if can I scroll this like this? No.
That'd be a good feature.
I know. Code box. All right, paste this in. So really the same thing, just making a call, bringing it back.
Do you know what that $ like string replacement is? Is that a TypeScript thing? Is that that's neat?
That's the string interpolation that's new for ES6 and supported by TypeScript. So remember, we used to have to do close quotes plus variable plus, right? So now you can just use this $, and then it will automatically interpolate this. It is the single best improvement in ES6.
My favorite feature.
Yeah, it's amazing. All right, so we've made these changes. The last thing that we need to do is come back to our image component. And if you remember, do stuff or do something here. Basically, I'm saying on tap, when we tap this, something needs to happen. So let's go ahead and add this in as well. And we'll go back and see.
So essentially, at a high level, you've got your list. You called the Flickr service. You said, where are my like 40,000 images of Franklin, Tennessee? And then essentially you're saying now, well, I need more details about that. I like clicked on this. I need to pass along the details to this service so I can get the actual URL to use. Am I understanding this correctly?
Yes, I'm basically passing the photo ID and saying, Flickr, give me the URL variables, because the way that Flickr composes URLs to photos is you need to know the server, you need to know the secret, you need to know the owner, and you need to know the photo ID. So if you have those 4 pieces of information, you can access any public photo.
But it is nice that in this case, it's hidden behind a service. So like your component code, it just says, give me a photo.
Right, correct. So here, we're going to talk about this.zone.run here in a second, but let me update the navigate item here. We're just going to say ID, which is a string, and what we want to do is just pass that in here. And we're going to use some string interpolation that we just talked about. So let's put in $$ID. There we go. Pass that in. TJ, you want to talk about this is zone.run while I actually add this in at the top?
Yeah, so zones is a new thing that Angular added in Angular 2. And if you know much about Angular 1, you know that really everything happened in this $scope thing, this global variable where everything was watching and sort of dirty checking it. And one of the things they wanted to do with Angular 2 is sort of move away from that for performance reasons, for stability reasons, and other things as well. And one of the ways they did this is with these zone APIs. So zones are basically isolated areas where code can run sort of, I guess, in isolation. And it's done basically for more performant change detection, just sort of data binding and such. But the one thing about that, though, is because everything runs in a zone, sometimes when you do something sort of outside of what Angular knows about, and in this case, I think it's dealing with the map and such. I don't remember specifically what it is in this app.
Yeah, so the markers, because we're passing in a callback for each marker, that callback gets fired outside the scope of Angular. Okay. So if we fire that callback will fire, but Angular will be completely unaware of anything that happens. So in order to tell Angular, hey, this is happening, then what we would do is call zone.run, and then that sort of notifies Angular that something has changed manually and brings it back into the loop.
Yeah, so like the trade-off really is in Angular 1, like it was simpler, but also you had potential performance problems if you were going crazy with the scope option. In this case, and certain situations, such as dealing with this plugin, you might have to tell Angular, hey, look, this happened. You need to update things.
All right, so I'm going to come over here and let's grab this, and I'm going to click on one of these markers. We've done everything correctly. Our new view should slide in, and we should see this image full. Let's see here. You know what? We did not add this to our routes here. I know exactly what the problem is. So if we come back to routing...
You ruined my drum roll.
I know. You remember we passed in that ID? We actually didn't say that we were going to give one. So :ID basically says this is going to be a parameter. And if you remember over in the image component here, you can see we're trying to pull it off there. So it wasn't there before. It should be there now. Let's go ahead and pull this back up.
Can I do the drum roll again?
Yeah, do the drum roll. Well, last time you messed it up. All right, so let's try. I'm going to try to pull up like something that's not a picture of someone's kids or something. Click on that. Slides in, and all right, awesome. Cool. So that's taken in downtown. So what I want to do now is I want to update the this is the last thing we're going to do here. I just want to update the images list because it is really ugly. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to use the new NativeScript theme that we showed off this morning, which we're super excited about. So to install that here, I'm going to do window, and I'm going to actually, well, let's see here, code. I can do, how do you do the terminal? Is it control?
It's a backticky thingy?
Backticky thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, look at Ray, adding value already. All right, so let's do, all we have to do is npm install NativeScript theme core. We're going to save
So
it.
will this be on by normal, or is
So-
it still being tested?
At the moment, it's considered like in beta or being
Okay.
tested, and we're looking for feedback from people that are using it. We intend to ship it as like the core, like in default apps as part of the next 2.4 release. But at the moment, gathering feedback, getting people to test it out, making sure it works as it's supposed to.
Yep, so we are limited by the not amazing Wi-Fi here at the moment. So we'll see if we can, we'll give this a second to load, and if it doesn't load, we'll jump over here and keep going. But what basically happens is when you do npm install NativeScript theme core, we showed this in the keynote this morning, it is going to pull in our theme files. It's going to put them in a folder called CSS, and then what it will do is add a import statement here to the top, and it will automatically add that theme to your application without overriding your styles. So I'm going to go ahead and just enter through all this. Okay, so you can see the import statement here. We're actually pulling in the CSS file from the new theme, and we have a light theme and a dark theme.
Yep, there's two different, I think we call them color palettes. I don't remember the term we came up with, but light and dark.
Yep, so we've added this, and what I want to do here is this was some of the default CSS that comes with that tap template. So we're just going to pull that out, and I'm just going to go with the default themes. I want to take a moment and revisit this HTML here. So let's look at the images list component. So you can see things like class list group, class list group item. This is how we use the different classes from the themes to make a list view that's spaced properly, images of rounded corners, thumbnails, one that just is easy on the eyes.
Yep, and if you go out to the documentation, it'll be in docs.nativescript.org, and I think it's /UI/theme. You can just go there and search for theme. You'll find a big list of all these different class names that you can add.
So you can see here the Wi-Fi's kind of let us down in terms of not loading our images anymore. But you can see the text here looks a whole lot nicer. You know, we have sort of a header here that shows us how far away this image is, and then this really nice typography here. Just so much easier to create gorgeous looking list views. And of course the theme includes buttons, it includes sliders, all of the different components that you would have in a native application you can now skin, as well as tons of utility classes for adjusting padding and margin and even the size of your typography.
Yeah,
awesome
like
stuff.
the little ones like M-2 to add margin 2 to elements, like that's just a tiny little thing that I just find super useful that I use all the time.
Yeah, very cool stuff. So that's the new theme, which is available now with 2.3. Just remember npm install NativeScript theme core --save.
Yep.
And with that, we'd like to turn it over actually and invite a special guest, Lino Tadros from MeWatt, joining us this morning.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
So Lino and his company have built an application called MeWatt, which we're going to show you here, and I'm going to let him talk about. But we saw this app was released not too long ago, and Dan actually hit us up. We were on Slack, and he was like, "Have you guys seen this app?" And we're like, "No, not yet." And he's like, "You got to see this app, man. This is crazy good." Yeah. So all of the demos that we showed are about to pale in comparison to what we're about to show you that they have built with NativeScript. So with that, I'm going to pull the application up here, Lino, and let you tell us all about it. Here it is.
Excellent. Thank you for having me. We have actually engineered a device that will be on the market in the next couple of weeks now. The device is to save energy and save money for consumers. And you'll be able to plug it in at home or at the office and then plug any of your appliances into it, like a TV or a refrigerator or a washing machine, and hook it up on the Wi-Fi in less than 30 seconds, very easy. And from that point on your iPhone and on your Android, the app will allow you to see how much wattage you're using, the power that you're using, and also the cost based on where you are as well. So for instance, right now I have 3 different appliances hooked up in California. We're here in Boston.
Are we about to see your appliances in California? Oh my gosh.
So right now I can see, for instance, click on appliances, and I can see I have my lamp in my office, and I also have my Samsung TV in my office, and I also have my refrigerator at home. So I can click on the refrigerator.
Let's turn your refrigerator off.
You know, that's not a good idea. My wife will not be so happy. And you can see it real time for now, today or week, and I can see how many kilowatts have been used and how much is it costing me, and so on and so forth. Also, I can turn it on and off, like a lot of other devices do that as well. You can turn on and off the device using Wi-Fi. But the beauty about this product is that you can actually see recommendation. Let's say, for instance, you want to give us more information. You want to tell us what model refrigerator or TV it is. And with time, there is machine learning happening in the back in the cloud that we can tell you how your device or your appliance is actually performing according to all the others, thousands of the same device all over the world. So if you're using more electricity, maybe the filter of the refrigerator is not too clean, maybe you can do something about it.
So are you actually going to give suggestions on how you're going to optimize?
The more you use the app, the more you're going to get more recommendation from the system built in right away.
Wow.
Also, you can click on groups, and you can group different appliances together. So for instance, I put all 3 of them in one, but I can have maybe 3 or 4 devices at home, 3 or 4 devices. I can turn them on and off all together, so instead of having to do one by one. And the final one here for the schedule, you can actually schedule a device to turn on and off in a specific amount of time, like the coffee maker or something like that. So if I click...
Is this the UI for NativeScript calendar control here, or is this one that you guys built?
No, actually, we're using it straight from the UI.
Hey, awesome.
So we're using a lot of the things. We've put a lot of our own UI, but we used a lot of the things that the UI for NativeScript comes with as well. As you can see here, my Samsung TV turns on at 11:45 a.m. and it shuts down at 9 p.m. and I can click on it in here and I can see Monday all the way to Sunday. And if I click, for instance, on edit in here, notice I can actually set it up for which time it goes on and which time it goes off for any of the days or all the days of the week, 7 days as well.
I'm just struck by how gorgeous this application is.
Thank you. Another thing that you can do when you buy one of those, hopefully in the near future, in the next couple of weeks, immediately you'll be able to go and see all your MeWatts, for instance, in here. And then I can add another one, and it will have a QR code on the back of it, so you can actually scan it, and it will automatically scan the QR code.
So you don't have to manually set it.
You don't have to enter. If you don't want to do that, you are more than welcome to enter the device ID at the pairing token, which will be written on the back of the QR code as well. But the scanning will work as well. And we've used a lot of plugins into NativeScript to do that, and we were very impressed. Especially the team have been very impressed with the fact that we can use so many of the NPMs and also for the CocoaPods. It made it very easy to actually go that route. And
nice.
As you know, we were talking about this earlier, the fact that we released the iOS version of the product, and within 48 hours we released the Android version as well.
Really? So you've got both platforms already?
Yeah, within 48 hours both of them were in the store, and it got accepted from the first try with the App Store.
Did you really? You're the first person ever, I do believe.
So we were very, very, very happy actually with the experience of NativeScript. The speed, definitely it's a major thing for us as well, because as a consulting company before that, we used to write in Objective-C and Java, and we do a lot of Windows as well in C#, and then we do a lot of Xamarin. We also went to the Cordova way before. So having people from the web in my team that know JavaScript and Angular very well, and they can take that code that you have written already for other application and bring it in straight and make a native app, not a Cordova app, not a hybrid app, a native app, it was definitely the deal maker for us.
That's awesome. So where can people go if they want to get their own MeWatt?
Well, it will be available in the next couple of weeks. Will be available on our website. You can pre-order it right now from MeWatt.com.
MeWatt, okay, MeWatt.com.
It will be also available on Amazon. It will be available in multiple places as well in the future as far as retailers. So we're very, very excited about it. The best thing about it also is for the enterprise. We're creating an enterprise application for it. So a large hotel company, for instance,
that has
will be buying a lot of those, and we'll put them into the rooms. We'll start with one hotel, then the whole city, and then hopefully it will go viral.
Okay, so I can see how that would really impact the bottom line, especially for places that have tons and thousands of electronic devices.
We are talking to a lot of hotel chains and also Las Vegas major hotels as well. The fact is we have a very good API layers so that you can actually integrate it with your own checkout, so that when somebody checks out from the hotel, they can push one button and all the devices hooked up to that to the MeWatts will all be turned off in the room. Because a lot of people leave their TV on and so on.
Oh man, I can't imagine. I do it.
So the thing that we're trying to do is to calculate that leaving something like this for 6 hours, multiply that by 5,000 rooms in the hotel, how much can it save you over the year for a hotel like that? And if that's significant, that would be something that a lot of different companies will look into as well.
Worth investing in.
One of the things I didn't mention also, if you hook it up to a dryer, for instance, and you start the dryer, we have push notification that will tell you when the dryer stops, so it will tell you that your load is actually done.
Oh, nice.
So wherever you are. So simple things like this will make your life easy with that device.
So it just detects just the energy change?
The energy stopped for a period of time. It did not start again, so it automatically sends you a notification based on that. The best news about this device is the price. We tried to make it very, very reasonable and inexpensive. Although there is like 86 different parts inside of this small little device, it's going to be $25
oh, wow.
to get this. Yeah. And all the applications are free as well.
Awesome. So that's the 2.3 webinar. Thank you, Lino. Thank you, TJ. Thanks to Raymond and everyone who joined us today. We'll be getting to your questions, and have a great day. Thanks.
Thank you.